Hey folks, welcome back to another Dice Tower preview. I'm Mark, and today we're taking a look at HE.R.O, which is brought to you by Ely River Games. It's for 2 to 4 players, ages 14 and up, and games generally run about 45 to 75 minutes. HE.R.O is a competitive or cooperative experience where you take the role of a young doctor in for their very first night shift at the hospital. During your night shift, you will have to save patients, perform surgeries, and amass as many heroic deeds as possible, all the while still finding enough time to sleep. In this game, resource management is your key to successfully getting through the night. But beware of chaos tokens and make sure you are always well rested. At the end of the night, the doctor with the most heroic tokens wins. So join me as we start our very first night shift. Let's start with the hospital. Of course, there's an ER. That's where all the patients are coming in. Several beds here to fill up, and as they come in, there'll be a time pressure as you deal with their ailments. They're fraught with all kinds of different issues. Some are going to require that you go off to surgery, and you have to take them to the surgery room. And there's an ICU room as well, and it all is listed on the card and how you best help that patient. Now there's a connecting hallway that takes you to the call room, which is where you'll get that much needed rest through the night. Also, there's a library where you can get new skills added to your current set. Now, also there's consultants, which you can call in at the last moment to save you if you need that extra help to save a patient. And those are the main areas of the board. And then you have the staff. There's several staff on duty, and they'll be cycling through as you move through the different rounds. Staff is ever changing, and they all have very different abilities. So that gives you kind of a glimpse at all the different things. And of course, patients. You have the big stack of patient cards that you'll be moving through the course of the game. You have a limited number of time. You've got 12 rounds in the main game, and you've got 8 rounds in a short game. So it's varied on how you want to play. Not only that, but you can play the competitive game or the cooperative game. Then we have our heroes of the game, or the doctors. These are the characters you're going to be embodying, trying to use them in order to save the patients as they come into the hospital. Now, you have various types of skills or resources you're going to be tapping into, but all the doctors have some sort of unique ability, which is really fun. That adds a lot of flavor to the game for sure. Now, the resources or skills from left to right here, you have physical, you've got surgical, you've got internal medicine, and you have neurology for the different types of ailments that come into the hospital. You have to put these different resources or skills together in order to save the patients. Now, staff is going to have a lot of those same things. Your fellow players do as well. And of course, those consultants are going to come in and add to your overall scores as they come in and help you. So there's lots of different ways to manage and deal with these patients. But again, if you're playing cooperative or competitive, it really kind of changes up how and when you get folks to help you in your time of need. So please remember again, this is a prototype. So I only have standees for my version of the game. They give me a couple samples of the miniatures. They're gonna look really neat. I really like the direction that they're going, just this nice cutesy graphics artwork that they're pulling off here. But I have tons of standees. And also for the competitive game, you're gonna be using a bag to store tokens. And I just have plain paper bags here. But again, this is just prototype. So don't take that to heart as you watch this. Now, the different types of tokens, you're gonna be collecting heroic deed tokens, obviously, because that's what you need to win the game. You've got time tokens, which will determine how much time the patient still has before they leave the hospital, so to say. And then you've got sleep tokens, which you're gonna need as well. And then finally, chaos tokens. Chaos tokens are particularly bad, and they can eliminate you from scoring at the end of the game, or if you're playing the cooperative version of the game, you can only get a certain amount of these before you end the game and just lose. So these chaos tokens are a big trigger, how badly things can go, things like that. So let's take a look at a round. How does that work? So at the top of the round, new patients arrive, and depending on which round it is, if it's 1 through 4, 1 patient arrives. If it's 5 through 8, then 2, and then 9 through 12, 3 will arrive. So it starts to get more and more hectic as the night progresses. So you got to keep that in mind as you're trying to deal with all this havoc and mayhem that these different patients are bringing. And it does create that time pressure, which I really like. Now, after the patients arrive, then each player will get to take their turn, and you get to perform 3 actions. You have several to choose from, but you only get to perform 3. Moving is one of your most basic actions. However, it does allow you to do various things. So when you move from one room to another, that costs you 1 action point. Now, when you do that, you can also take 1 staff member with you in order to get extra help perhaps in that next room. Now, when you do that, you also have the option of moving a patient from like the ER to the surgical suite. So if you do that though, it causes chaos in the hospital. You will be getting a chaos token for that movement. Now, you can also run, which running through a hospital at night is just not the good thing to do. But if you do run, you will get also more chaos tokens, so keep that in mind. And other things you might do is visit the call room so you can get some much needed rest, sleep, and get a sleep token. Now, if you were able to spend all 3 of your action points in the call room, you can get an extra sleep token. So you get 4 of them, and you'll store those in your bag in the competitive game. However, the cooperative game, they'll just be placed out in the open so everyone can tap into them, because you can use those sleep tokens to get rid of chaos tokens, depending on the player count that you're using. So those are the things you're doing with sleep and so forth. But then you have the library. If you spend action points there, you can get one of the cards, which I love these cards. They're super fun, thematic, whimsical at times, and basically all they're doing is just giving you an additional bump to your stats for your heroes or your doctors. But I like all the variants and all the fun they put into these cards. They put a lot of thought into them. I really like that aspect. I almost feel like they're like trading cards from the old days of like Garbage Pail Kids or something like that. It has that vibe to it, but they just give you new stats, new different things that you can do with them, and just really augmenting and adding more abilities to your doctors. Another action you might perform is look around. Sometimes you get into a situation where the ER is empty or there's just not enough patients really to deal with. So you can look around and get a new patient and put them into the ER, and adding all their different things to that. But we'll take a look at those cards in a minute. And of course, the biggest action that you might perform on your turn is simply to treat a patient. Obviously, you need to do this in order to get those heroic tokens and win the game. But we'll take a closer look at what that means. But you can also call for help once per turn, or you can get a staff member to move into the room with you, or a consultant to do the same thing. Now, it's going to cause some chaos, so that is also going to generate chaos tokens for you, but you'll bring them in and hopefully they're able to give you enough aid to save that patient and deal with them. But you also can consult with one of your fellow players, and if you do, then you can use their abilities as well on top of yours. And let's take a look at what that means. So one of the things, when those patients do come into the hospital, you're going to be placing time tokens on them. You'll see in the top left corner of these patient cards that you'll have a certain number of rounds in order to deal with them, in order to save them. So you'll place those on there, but in order to treat these patients, you're going to be looking at what is wrong with them, obviously. So for this one, dislocated shoulder, you're going to need 6 physical and 1 surgical in order to heal this patient and get them out. And then there's rewards associated with that. So in the top right corner, you'll find the reward, how many heroic tokens you get for that. But if any of your fellow players are in the room at the time, they're going to get this freeloader benefit that's at the bottom corner of the card. And if you happen to consult with one of your fellow players in order to use their skills to help you achieve and save this patient, then they're going to get double that freeloader expense. So you have to keep that in mind. You're going to be feeding tokens to your fellow players in that competitive version, but in the cooperative version, you just need a number of heroic deeds in order to win the game at the end. So as you can imagine, there's so many different types of patients, and how you deal with them is key. So there's even aliens. There's, I love the alien card. Now there's also requirements. You might need to go to surgery or ICU, or there might be other benefits. You might get sleep tokens from saving a patient, or you have a choice of getting heroic deeds or getting more knowledge so you can add it to your stats and so forth. So there's lots of variance in how and when you deal with these patients and the different types of rewards that you can get. But again, combining your forces, using your fellow players, especially in the co-op game, you're going to be using all those skills to save them. And you can, again, use staff members, you can use your fellow players, you can use the consultants, and again, there are detriments if you're doing the competitive game to having your fellow players, but sometimes you really need to, especially if you're down the wire, to save somebody, and they might generate a ton of chaos tokens. So you really want to keep an eye on that, on which patients are most critical and which ones might have the most detriment when you don't deal with them in time. After all the players have taken all their actions, then it's time to finish out the round. Just some basic things. The staff, they're on a clock, so you're going to move the bottom 2 out of the hospital, and everything shifts down. 2 new ones come in, which is good because then you have the ability to have new types of resources or skills in play that you can tap into. And of course, if any consultants were brought into the hospital in that round, then they're going to leave. Now, that doesn't mean they're out of the game. They're just out of that particular round, and you can bring them back in later if you need them. Again, generating chaos tokens if you do. Now, also the patients that are in play, all the time markers, you're going to be removing one from each patient. So hopefully you've managed them correctly and you don't generate chaos tokens from losing patients. And then finally, you have the time track at the top. You're going to be moving the time track ever closer to the end of the game. Into the game, you're just going to be calculating points and score based on the tokens that you've collected in your bag or collectively as you played the co-op version. But there's things here that can actually remove you from scoring at the end of the game if you didn't get enough rest and if you have too many chaos tokens. Also in the co-op version, too many chaos tokens will just stop the game dead in its tracks. So lots of different ways to lose, so you have to manage all these different types of resources and things that you're doing in order to win the game and have the most heroic deeds. All right, folks, just a reminder once again, this has been a Dice Tower paid preview, and everything you've seen here has been in prototype form, so keep a close eye on the campaign for any changes that still may occur. Now, with that said, I really like the cutesy style of the artwork, the graphics. I like the miniatures, really neat, but you know, the choices to be made as you deal with patients, and if you have to pull in help, it really is interesting. And sometimes you have to take chaos tokens in order to fulfill and save patients and get those heroic tokens, those heroic deeds. But again, library cards for augmenting your doctor and heroes, that adds a lot of flavor to the game. Just so many choices to be made as you move around this hospital and do various things and fight the time pressure that is upon you. But folks, ultimately, if this looks like something of interest to you, I'm sure they'd appreciate your support. So I think that's it from me, and until next time, we'll see you at the table.